Yeah, so Kelly and I met in college, 19 years of age, getting married when we were 21, and we've always had some involvement in ministry of some sort. Both of us grew up in the country. I had to feed cows before I could go off to high school, and apple orchard, like 150 trees, 500 feet off the road. I couldn't see my neighbors. So we were country people and very comfortable in the country and pretty nervous in the city. There were times where I would drive down Broadway, and twice I remember stopping at a red light and then looking both ways to make sure it was clear and then just running the red light because I was nervous about this neighborhood. So the irony is 20 years later, we work here full time in this ministry in this neighborhood. The first time we came to this neighborhood, I pulled the car up next to the curb in front of the building and told Kelly not to open the door until I turned the keys off, and I lined the building up perfectly with the doors and then turned the keys, and we ran inside because we were scared. And one of our guests that's still part of our ministry lived next door and saw that and figured out that we were scared, and so she would meet us at the car and walk us to the building. So now we walk up and down the street and people are like, "Hey, Pastor Dave." I don't like being called Dave, but here they call me whatever they want. It really started in 2006. I was at a conference and a man named Jim Cymbala was speaking every night. He was the pastor of a place called Brooklyn Tabernacle. And as he spoke and talked about his own journey into urban ministry, very similar background to mine, I felt like God saying, "This is what I want you to do." And so after 3 or 4 nights, I walked out and I called my wife, who usually talks me out of all my ideas. And I said, I've got this weird feeling like God's calling us to urban ministry. How do you feel about that? And she said words that'll haunt me the rest of my life. She said, yeah, I've been feeling that way for 3 years. And every time it comes up, I just pray that if it's really from God, that He'd put it on your heart as well. And so me being the spiritual giant I am, I said one word in response, and that word was nuts. Because I felt like that was confirmation. Months went by. I talked to Dan Rogers at Cherry Street. I was helping him flip pancakes one Saturday morning in February. And I said, I've got this feeling God's calling us into some kind of urban ministry. And Dan, being a little bit more charismatic than I am, said, "I have a word from the Lord from you, brother." And I have to say I kind of chafed against that. So he walked me around the corner to Western Avenue Baptist Church, and we stood on the steps, this old broken down building. The steps were all kind of whopper-jawed and uneven, and the building looked like it could blow over in a good stiff wind. Dan said, "This is where God's calling you." And I was very skeptical. And Dan said, "Would you at least agree to meet with Pastor Don Bethan, the pastor that's here?" I said, "Yeah, I'll meet with him." So what I found out later was that Dan and that pastor were in a prayer meeting every Friday for the same 3 years that Kelly had been praying. And every Friday, Don Bethan's prayer request was, "Please, God, send somebody to fill in for me, take over." So when I met Pastor Don and his wife Betty, and Kelly and I, all 4 of us met together, we felt pretty sure that this is where God was calling us to minister. And so we started working alongside of them for about 6 months. And at one point in the summer of '07, Pastor Don pulled me aside and said, "Do you notice the people smell?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, do you notice the smell?" And I said, "No, I really don't." And he goes, "That's confirmation that God's called you to this work." He goes, "If the people's smell annoys you, He's called you somewhere else." So we passed the olfactory test. And so in October 12th, I believe, of 2007, Pastor Don bid his farewell to the congregation he had assembled and built over more than a dozen years, and turned it over to us. He was really emphatic at the end. He told everybody that was there, said, "Pastor David's in charge now, and for at least 1 year, if you call me, I won't answer. If I mistakenly answer, I won't talk to you. And if somehow you get me and ask me a question, I'm going to tell you to go ask Pastor David." It was a real gift that he gave us, and turned over this group that he'd built and nurtured to Kelly and I. And he kept his word for that first year especially. And so we really appreciate the legacy that they built, and we stand on the foundation of certainly the gospel and the scriptures, but also on the people that worked in this ministry before us. And so we really honor Pastor Don and Betty Beth.
If you are moved by the story and want to help beat poverty, you can donate directly at www.beatpovertytoledo.com. Also, we would appreciate it if you would like and follow our pages on both Facebook and YouTube by searching for Mosaic Ministries of South Toledo. Finally, we invite you to come take a tour of our project and operations by clicking the Take a Tour button on the website. Thanks for watching.